Here it is, day 3. Well, it's important to recognize the role of genetics and past traumatic events in regards to our dogs. Getting stuck in that story can lead to unwanted consequences. I think that this is the day that has made me so nervous about this boot camp, because the story is about me and about the way that my parents raised me, and it's a very, very complicated topic. It's very, very layered. It is why I consider myself to have incredibly, massively profound firsthand knowledge about white saviorism, because I know what the opposite of that is. And the story is about myself. And so I want you guys to know, as people that have chosen to come here and learn from me, when I talk about that, when I advocate for things like that, when I speak on it, it's because it's such a personal story to me, because I was adopted by white people into a white family that moved me to a white state in a white town. Both of my sides of my family are all white. Every single person, every single friend, every single neighbor, everyone is white. So I'm finding it. So it gives me a very unique perspective about what happens when we fall into certain lines of thinking about sentient beings that we have adopted. I found it. See it? I found it. Okay? Because none of us had our dogs. They're not our biological, so they come with their own story, their own backstory. And so I just want to share a little bit about myself. My backstory is that my biological mother, was 15 years old. She had sex with her best friend's older brother, who she had a crush on. One time, she got pregnant. She hid that pregnancy. This is in the deep south, so this is in Georgia in the early 80s. She hid that pregnancy till she could not anymore. She told her mother, and her mom was like, okay, we'll use your dad's social security check. Her father had passed away when she was very young. My father, that was a dog trainer, the president's dog trainer, that's him. And she, they just intended to deal with it that way. And my mother was like, absolutely not. No, this is not my story. This is not her story. She deserves a better life somewhere else. So she gave me up for adoption. And I was put on an adoption list, a private adoption list. So this is not through the state in Georgia, which has notoriously strict adoption guidelines. This is a private adoption through an OBGYN. And he's still alive today. He ended up becoming the mayor of that town. His name's Dr. Willie Adams in Albany, Georgia. And he was a very well-known obstetrician there. And he helped people find babies, and babies find homes. So I want you to really think about what I'm saying as I'm saying this. I really, really want people that have rescued dogs, like it's going to make me cry. I really want you to listen to me and link the lens of what your dog may feel like, okay? I know that I'm giving you permission to compare my life to your dog's life, because I think it's so useful, okay? So the reason that he chose my parents had just put their name on the list like a couple months before I was born. It was a very long list. So when their lawyer called him over Labor Day weekend in 1982 and said, there's a baby, what's going on? Because they knew that they were going to have to wait for some period of time. And it was explained to them that Dr. Adams had decided that my parents would be the best because my dad was an officer in the Marine Corps. And we moved around a lot. And my parents were very worldly and very cultured and very open. And so he chose my parents because he thought, she's not going to be accepted in the black community because she's mixed. At that time, that was his belief as a black man. I can't speak to whether that was true or not. I can tell you that that's what he felt. And he felt that I wouldn't be accepted in the white community, or that I would struggle, lose my identity, if I was adopted by a white family. And he knew that my parents knew lots and lots about the Black community and would be able to expose me to Black people because of the nature of their work. And so my mom asked, is there something wrong with this? But I don't understand what, well, she's mixed. Okay, and they were like, and nothing. She's perfectly healthy. And my mom was like, that was a dumb thing to say to me. I don't care about that. I'm coming to get that baby right now. And that was it, basically. I was about 3 days old. So here's where I want you to link the two things together. The interesting part of that is my dad retired when I was about 5 or 6 years old. We were living in California. And I got to live in multiple different places. I lived in Japan for several years, lived in multiple different places in California. Before he retired, and they retired, and then we moved here to Kansas, where my mom's from, because my dad is from deep, deep, deep in the Ozarks, in a place even more isolated than this. And my mom wasn't gonna move there out to that. My mom wasn't gonna do that. My mom's a city girl. So we moved here, and my life became really different, but my parents had instilled certain things in me, definitely a backbone, and also they have a great deal of knowledge about Black culture, Black history. I would say Black history. I wouldn't necessarily say that they evolved to know a lot about Black culture as it has evolved, because they're older now, and when you get older, you just don't, you care about what you care about. But that's my job. That's my job. And they did a great job instilling that in me to make sure that I understood Black history, and that I read Black authors, and that I was looking at my life through the Black lens, which is, I think, what's given me so much confidence and the ability to really shine. I can tell you some things that my mom and my dad did not do. They did not go around telling every single person that they met that I was adopted. They did not do that, and it's obvious. It's obvious. Because when you go around and you tell everyone that your child is adopted, she's adopted. That's for you. That's not for them. That's for you, and that's something that's been injected into us as a result of living in the West here in America. And that's not our fault, but that's what has happened. And it's called saviorism. And it's called white saviorism because it's from this very specific kind of colonizing sort of lens. And I don't want to get too far into that because I don't want to alienate anybody. We all are born in the bodies that none of us can help what color we are, what race we are, what gender we, all of those things. Like, we're all just here. We're all just here. We got dropped in. Boom. But the reason that I want people to learn about this is so that you have an awareness when you're doing it and you don't participate in it. So when you talk about your dog, are you talking about your dog for you or for them? Because my mother did not go around telling people that I was adopted. I'm going to tell you something really profound about that. My mom discovered very early on that when she was alone with me, people assumed that she had had sex with a Black man and or was married to a Black man, and they treated her very, very differently than when my father was with us, a white man with a white woman. Then it was, oh my God, and there is no other thing to call that other than a gross misunderstanding about what my mother and father were doing with me. That's society looking at that and saying, wow, how wonderful. I mean, she very, very quickly she saw that. Isn't that interesting? That if this were my biological daughter, I would not get the accolades. I would not get the sash of honor. I would not get the tip of the hat. If this was my biological daughter, it would in fact be not as interesting of a story to the general public. And so I think what happens is that we want validation. We want to feel as though we've done something that's meaningful, which are all normal things to want or to do as a person. Doesn't mean you're bad. It just means that perhaps we should analyze what our motives are for something. And if we continue to do a thing when we have become aware that our motive was for ourselves, it's probably not serving the greater team, right? So another thing is that I have two sides of my family. The African American side of my family happens to be quite exceptional, very successful, very focused, high achieving individuals. There's lots of college degrees. There's, I'm the wild one. I'm the crazy one, right? Okay, and they're loving and accepting of me, but they're very, very serious people. Very serious, very studious, very high-ranking military. But my biological side of the family, on my paternal side, Alabama red dirt, long line of denim jeans, baby. Just poor folks. And addiction runs in poverty. Addiction runs everywhere, but at that time, it really ran in poverty. And it has eaten alive a family of charismatic, wonderful people that had value. And so that's in my genetics too. So for a really long time, until I was 20, we didn't really know anything about my genetics because my parents didn't really want to think about it. They just wanted to have their family, and my mom was terrified that my mom would come back and take me. I was terrified that she would come back and take me. And I'm really close with her now, and she's wonderful. Like I said, serious people, high achieving people. But it just wasn't like, those are my parents. Those are my parents. They didn't rescue me. They didn't fucking save me. Everyone is born into the circumstance that they're born into. And then you come into connection with them somehow. That's what's happening. That there was a dog at a shelter, and then we decided to go in and pull that dog out of the shelter because it needs a home. We don't want to see dogs dying in the shelter. And then we take it home, and then we make that whole dog's life about the fact that it's a rescue. We put stickers on our cars about it. Who rescued who? It's just, it's hard for me to look at that and watch that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's really, really difficult for me. Because I think the underlying meaning of it just is triggering to me. And so I just thought I would just start talking about it and start sharing about my story and what that would feel like if my parents based everything about me on the fact that they rescued me in this event in 1982 that then defined my entire life. And when they referred to me as the adopted daughter every single time. Oh, she's adopted. Anybody that they could breathe the word to, they yelled out, oh yeah, she's adopted. Like, I don't ever talk about how I got Enzo, and it's not because I'm ashamed that I bought a puppy. It's because it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant in the same way that stepchild that you may love that lives in your house that you feel is your child, they are. You see what I'm saying? It's this form of singling out that we really need to start looking at and talking about. So that's what we're doing today. Not the second thing, I've said many things, but the next thing I'd like to talk about is kind of what that topic was, living in the past, blaming genetics, that kind of thing. So part of my genetics, again, was addiction, suicide, and all the things that go with that. We'll stop there. But my parents didn't know that, and I didn't know that. I didn't know until I was 20, and I didn't develop my addictions probably until a little after that time. It was probably right around that age. I think at that time I was just developing a cocaine problem. So I didn't really know that this had run in my family, and I had no reason to assume that it did. Just because a woman has a baby when she's 17 or 16 or 17 doesn't mean that she's a junkie. I was born completely healthy, no drugs in my system or anything like that, so I had no reason to believe anything like that. Does it mean that, oh, well, that explains it. That's why. That's why you became an addict, because you're genetically predisposed. So is Layla. Layla has both parents. So the statistics are, if you have one parent that is an addict or alcoholic, you have a 50% chance. I love the way they say it. Like you just roll dice and then you become an addict because it was a 50-50 chance genetically. That's nonsensical. You have an 85% chance if you have both parents that are addicts or alcoholics. Well, that's nonsensical. That's not what makes you an addict or alcoholic. If a dog has reactivity, we can blame it on genetics all we want. People can blame it on genetics all they want, and maybe there is truth to that. I'm not going to say there's not, but this obsessive need to find why so that, or to analyze so that, it's all this particular game that people play in alcoholism and addiction all the time. And we learn about it there, but we don't learn about it in regular life. We don't learn about it in the real world. Nobody teaches us this stuff. Unless you're in recovery meetings, you're probably not privy to things like this, which is terrifying to me. I know people's parents that have been too permissive and they became addicts and alcoholics because they didn't learn that there would be someone that would reinforce boundaries and keep them safe from the world, that cared about their safety. It was just too much. I know people that have become addicts and alcoholics that had parents that were controlling, tried to suppress their behavior. It was too much. So they chose escape in a different way. I have never met anyone in all of my years that had loving parents, that had healthy relationships, that became an alcoholic or addict, in the same way that I believe that if this dog who's said to be reactive, if you could put them in the time machine and put them back in a home where they had their needs met, they would not develop these issues. It's the same thing. And we play this game together about a lot of things, but we do it about the relationships in our life. I think it's because of this. 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 And while it's important sometimes to know why, just so you have, where did this come from? What is the cycle? How can I avoid this in the future? Those things are important. But to hang on to, well, Jerry did come from a poor black girl in the South that was like a teenager. Her, this is genetic. Oh, this is genetic. That's what we're doing to our dogs. And nobody really sees it, I don't think. Now hold on. I'm getting into something I probably shouldn't say. I don't think anybody has the personal perspective of the dog. I think everybody is studying dogs, and nobody's sitting inside of what it feels like for somebody to come and adopt you and raise you. I don't think anybody's thought about it like that or talked about it like that. I think it's all from the lens of behavioral science, which is helpful, but it's very, 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 very behind in dogs. That's why I don't study a lot of canine behavioral science, because I think it's so behind. I think that we're much further ahead in human neuroscience and human social science. And so we should be paying attention to that because we're in the equation with the dogs. in the way that we relate, in the way that we think. We have to learn to look at it from the lens of the dog, and we're just not going to be able to do that if we keep studying them like they're subjects. We have to like literally think about, what is it really like when every single time somebody introduces you to a new person, they tell them you're a fucking rescue dog. I would have been mortified had my parents done that to me. And it's obvious that I'm adopted. But my mom's favorite thing is when people would say, you sound like your mom or you look like your mom to her. She would just, oh my God. It was like everything to her. And I do sound like her. And I am a lot like her. A lot like her. In equal parts that I am to my mother that is my biological mother. I'm 50% like her, and I'm 50% like my mother because I had a good mother that raised me, that loved me, that nurtured me. And my bond is much, much stronger to her than it is my biological mother, who I've known half my life. I mean, I've known her for 20 plus years. You know, we're close. But it could never compare to what my mother put into me. And it was never about her. It was never about her needing everyone to know that she fucking rescued a kid or a dog or whatever. Ever. That's why I get so sensitive about it, because what was modeled to me was something totally different. And I get this like, why are you saying that? Like, why does that have anything to do with it? Does your dog need everyone to know that? No. No. So it's super hard to hear, and I get that. But think about my mom. Think about me. Link those things together, and do your very best to kind of avoid the defensive feeling. I wouldn't say avoid the feeling. I would tell you to just fall right into that motherfucker. Okay, feel defensive then. Take it all the way and take the train all the way into the station. Because I bet you through that process you're going to figure out why you're so defensive about it. It's probably because there's a little bit of truth to it. And when we figure out that truth and we have that awareness, when we make that mistake again, there's pain there. Because now we're aware. And that's what makes you change. So the other topic on genetics that I wanted to just touch on briefly today is the separation anxiety again. And I've noticed, just as a professional in the industry over several years, there is this trend to niche every single thing in dog training. And there is this niche on anxiety. There's people that deal specifically with separation anxiety. There's people that deal specifically with this type of anxiety. There's people that deal with this. And if in the conversation they're not talking about intermittent reinforcement and the negative effects of human beings on dogs, I think they've missed the mark. I think we're missing the mark with a lot of things. And I think what we're doing in relationship with our dogs is the largest contributor to their behavior. I think that the second largest contributor to their behavior is environmental stimulation and them being in places that they are not genetically designed to handle, because they do not have really cool advanced prefrontal cortex like we do. They can do all this higher reasoning and logic. They don't have that. They have like a whole brain with the frontal, I'm not saying that, but they don't have that. The simplest way I could say it is the advanced reasoning that we have, even though border collies sometimes look like they do. They don't have that. And so they're in an environment that we can habituate to easily, because we can logically understand what the sounds are, where they're coming from, and therefore we can better predict the pattern of when they're happening, and we just habituate. We I don't know a better word for that. We just get used to it, right? Because it's life. The trash truck comes by, it's really loud. The mail guy, oh my gosh, my mailbox is like almost in my yard, and the mail guy comes every day and he drives up, and there's all these things that happen that we as human beings can understand, but dogs don't. they're operating off a much more primitive instinctual system. And then we put them in these really busy environments like New York City, like LA. And then we will blame everything but the fact that that's a super sensitive apex predator, and we just put him in a front yard in Oakland. And every single time we walk out of the fence, there's 5 or 6 other pit bulls. There's nothing wrong with the dogs. They're just being dogs. Dogs really aren't meant to live in that type of way without very particular types of training in really particular outlets, and somebody to oversee that dogs are getting their basic needs met. Otherwise, disaster happens. We've watched people ripped apart in their backyards by their own dogs. We've watched dogs chase other people down and injure or kill their dogs, or small children, or elderly people, or grown people. We've watched as pit bulls and bullies have attacked horses. This is all, this is known. This is common knowledge. So this is known. And the same people that are stewards of these dogs will say things like, it's all in how you raise them. And then the other crowd goes, oh, no, it's absolutely genetics. What are you talking about? These dogs are made to do this certain particular thing. Both are true. Both are true. They're genetically designed to do certain things that are not conducive to living in large groups in the city or living in dense populations. They're just not. So that's true. But also that it is in how you raise them. Because that dog, in the hands of someone that didn't know, would have been a disaster. So everyone going around going, it's not how you raise them, it's a genetics. That was a trend that happened, you guys. It was a trend. People hopped on it. It's a thing. And then we got don't bully my breed stuff. I have a shirt too. There are people like, I don't know why these dogs get a bad rap, and they're petting the dog. What the fuck do you mean you don't know why they get a bad rap? Because they're wreaking havoc all over the world because humans are responsible for them, and we wreak havoc because we have an epidemic of not understanding how to be in relationship. We have an epidemic of thinking another sentient being that is an apex predator, that is among the most powerful in the animal kingdom, among the most powerful in the animal kingdom, is a great idea for us to just plop into our home in the middle of Queens with our 3 kids that are running around and screaming. Or maybe you're in the middle of Arkansas with 3 kids that are running around and screaming in a house, running up to the dog, shaking its face. Like, we can blame genetics all we want. We can tell everybody that we rescued our dogs to make us whatever. Like, it's all just distraction from the real work, which is relationship and connection. And that's all I have to say about that. So today we're going to take our skills outside. We've got our, I dropped a piece and you didn't get it. Good boy. We've got our scatters that we're doing, and we've got our ready catch that we're doing. We know now that the scatters are to get our dog's nose down, not looking at whatever it is that they, right? Scatters are an alternative behavior to do something else besides lunging, something else besides looking, something else, but it's not always enough. Sometimes they need to move their bodies, right? Remember, we learned that yesterday. You're such a little sweetie. Over time, I stopped saying ready. So I stopped even cueing him, and he would just have to pay attention. That was a terrible throw. He would just have to pay attention, and that made him really fast at catching it. Okay. So what we're going to do today, I just brought this because I want you to remember that whatever you're doing outside, you need to have a leash on your dog. This is where I'm at with my dog, okay? So he doesn't wear one, but for today, he's going to be the best boy, and he's going to wear one so that I can show you how I use the long line or drag line. I really don't like to hold the leash a lot. I like to step on it. I wasn't ready. All right, come this way, sweetheart. And we're just gonna, his foot's hurt, everybody. He's okay though. And we're just gonna do some alternating, find it? And I'm gonna move around so he has to come and look for me, or at least look in my direction to see if I'm gonna give him anything else. So I can send him where I want him to go. Ready, catch. Man, you're off today. Find it. Right here, sweetheart. Sometimes he doesn't see it. I just tell him, or I throw a scatter in that area again, or I throw one that leads to that area, and then he can normally sniff out the scatter that way. So let's say that my dog sees something off in the distance and I'm like, oh shit. I just walk up and step on the line, find it. And then whatever goes by, and I'm standing on the line. So if he makes an error of impulse, which is what that would be, because he knows how to do this stuff. So it would be just impulsivity that he erred. Or maybe he didn't hear me or something like that. Then it's not a big deal because I'm standing on the leash, and if he makes a mistake, he's just going to stay there. And then I can throw another scatter. I can throw a ready catch. If you want to hold the leash, that's fine too. Doesn't really matter. It's just whatever you prefer. I just always have a bunch of stuff in my hands, so I don't like to hold the leash. Okay, come on this way, sweetheart. Find it. And this is all you're going to do. You're going to walk around in if your front yard is way, way, way too distracting, don't do that. Start in your backyard. But if you've been practicing this and your dog's pretty good, go out in the front yard. There's always tons of stuff going on. I think I made those pieces way too small. This is it. This is how I spend the majority of my time with my dog. And it's not a bunch of fancy leash drills. I don't lure him into, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that stuff. The average person I have found is wanting a comfortable life with their dog where they feel like their dog's happy and they're happy and they can do things together. And I have found that spending lots of time with them and helping them develop what the expectations are through repetition and positive reinforcement has been the best way. Oh, hello, sir. Oh my God, look who came. Ready, catch. We're just off today. This is also how I got him to just come back to me when he was done swimming in the river or investigating something. He comes back and he just stands in front of me and looks at me because he knows I'm going to give him food. And I like that he knows that. And if I don't give him food, if I don't have any or something like that, which would be unusual, or if I'm out, I just go, I'm out, you ate it all. And then he's like, okay. Because I always give him food, so it's not a big deal when every once in a while, oh, we're out. Catch. Find it. Dog training is boring when you really break it down. It's interesting to talk about, but it's boring in practice. Good job, buddy. It's interesting to talk about, but boring in practice. All right, so go to your mini packs. Do short video of you outside. Use movement. Walk around. Encourage your dog to follow you. And also, I encourage you to send your dog where you want them to go instead of thinking about preventing them from where you don't want them to go. So if I'm walking in a straight line and I want my dog to come with me, I can turn and backpedal to ensure that. Ready, catch. Come on, sweetie. Find it. And now he's over there off the road that we might be on. So think about it like that. Start to practice it like that, and it'll be much easier for you when we take it mobile.